The acquittal from the bench, which is what the sentence of the murderer Kim Potter amounts to, is a reprehensible act of animalistic anti-black racism by a psychopathic bigot, Regina Chu, who, by the way, I think it needs to be said, has been getting support from some of those black immigrants. As far as they're concerned, they have more in common with her being fellow immigrants than they do with black people, so that tells you something. But that perverted demonic creature made a show of its contempt, not only for Daunte Wright's life, but also for that of his family. While the family was giving their victim impact statement, that racist Regina Chu looked bored, making it clear she was ignoring them, just putting on a show. Oh God, how long is this going to go on? Then came the murderer Kim Potter. Chu, acting just like Tammy the Mammy in Texas during the Amber Geiger trial, began suddenly perking up, looking at Kim Potter as if she was the one who had been killed. Just, oh God, so much concern in her eyes. Poor child, what did they do to you? And during Regina the racist sentencing, which was nothing more than a slap in the face and spitting in the face of all decent good people everywhere, that creature went overboard, making it clear that this putrid excuse for a human being set on camera for the world to see, to those who disagree and feel a longer prison sentence is appropriate, as difficult as it may be, please try to empathize with Miss Potter's situation. I mean, she's going all out to make it clear she's a de facto member of the defense. And she wants to make it blatant and clear to everyone, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, that nigger's dead, and I'm not letting this good white woman go to prison. Why? This woman's on team white supremacy, and so am I. Please try to empathize with Potter's situation. A situation that Kim Potter put herself in deliberately. She thought she could get away with murder. And racist Chu has told everyone she's going to do everything she can to make sure that the murderer walks. This thing said nothing about Daunte Wright other than, oh, so sad. In fact, I'm not even sure she said that much, but she did go into a long, demented rant about how hard a time Kim Potter has had and that she's not your normal killer. Well, that animal killed someone, didn't she? This heifer then went on to claim that Potter's murdering of Daunte Wright wasn't as bad as, say, the killing of Justine Demond, which, by the way, happened in a pitch-black alley in the dead of night, with Justine Demond coming out of the darkness, unannounced. Now, if ever there was an example of the proverbial split-second decision that the white media and all of their apologists claim that the police routinely have to deal with, it would have been Mohamed Noor's completely accidental shooting of Justine Demond. That was a split-second decision. What Kim Potter did was exactly the opposite. It wasn't an accident, and it wasn't a split-second decision. You watch the video. She saw that there were two other officers who were already dealing with Wright, and she forced her way in between, just going to elbow her way in a situation where she almost shot one of them. That's not a split-second decision. That was murder. And racist Chu knows that. I'll spare you the details of how that piece of trash praised Potter for trying to do the right thing, and babbled on about how police have the most difficult job. Not according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they've actually got one of the safest. And the biggest lie of all, that Potter never intended to hurt anyone. Nowhere in racist Chu's BS-laden rant does she say anything about the fact that after being convicted, murderer Potter was smiling for her picture as she was getting taken off to jail. She was smiling. This is your remorseful person who just made a mistake? She was so broken up about her mistake, she was smiling like she had just won the lottery. No mention, of course, was made of that. That, too, is part of Kim Potter's situation that racist Chu wasn't very concerned about. This was a racial message that puke was sending, but it's also a sign of desperation. The thugs in blue are not gaining public support. They're losing it. And the consistent convictions of cops who kill is not abating. It is the new normal. Kim Potter was tried by an all-white jury. 11 of the 12 jurors were white. And they voted to convict. This after 2020. This wasn't something where someone could claim, oh, well, there was all of those civil uprisings going on. Nah, this was 2 years later. So public sentiment isn't wavering, it isn't weakening, it isn't changing. The propaganda arm of white supremacy, the white media, has not succeeded in changing minds. Now, we saw this, by the way, with the collaborators in the murder of Laquan McDonald in Chicago. We saw judges illegally using their position to give acquittals from the bench. The white female judge in the case of the collaborators in the murder of Laquan McDonald, she threw out the charges against them, Jason Van Dyke's co-conspirators. And when she gave her ruling, she made it clear that this was a personal, racial, political message she was sending. This wasn't a judicial ruling. This was her giving her own personal repudiation of Black Lives Matter and how are you going to punish the police. This was her making a statement. The sentence that the white supremacist judge in the Jason Van Dyke trial gave was the same thing. Racists on the bench telling the public that they will defy the will of the people and they'll do so blatantly and illegally and dare the public to do anything about it. In the minds of these white supremacists, they think that by giving these slap-on-the-wrist sentences, which is what they're doing consistently, you think we're going to be putting them in prison just because you say they're guilty. Okay, we can't get any more quickie acquittals. We can't engineer any more hung juries. That day is done, so we'll just forget it. We're just going to come out and just say we're to overturn the verdict. Cop kills a black person, well, we're not sending him to prison. They think that if they just keep doing that, then the public will eventually get tired, demoralized. They'll just give up and accept that injustice cannot be beat. Well, they're wrong. All they're doing is pointing out to us who it is that clearly are the enemies of justice. That's all they're doing. They're highlighting, okay, these are the people who need to be gotten out the paint. Judges are declaring that they are at war with the people. This is a declaration that they stand with murderers and against the public. Judges are telling everyone that they're taking sides against the law, against the people, against justice. That they understand that it was never difficult to convict the police. The only problem was that the DAs and judges didn't want to do it. That's become excruciatingly obvious to everyone now, because we put these bastards on the defensive and kept them there. We have forced them into a corner, and we've taken away one by one their little excuses, one by one their little defenses, taken them away. Oh, what are you going to claim now? Now that you got these juries consistently convicting them, well, what's the excuse going to be now? Now that the public is putting these scumbags in cages where they belong, it's the judges who are now forced to have to put aside any pretense of impartiality. And before people go getting all down in the mouth and defeatist, keep in mind, I told you this would be part of the trajectory of their defeat. I warned you years ago that as the juries begin to convict these scumbags, you're going to have these cops deciding to retreat to the judges. That would be their last ditch. They would start retreating to the judges. Eventually, they're going to be demanding bench trials. That's when they're going to be making it official that they're going to do everything they can to stay away from the public altogether. Try to remove the people from the process as much as they can and make it where all the scumbags who get together and the cops, the DAs, and the judges who are just basically peas in a pod, they all work together. Where we're going to have this is just a closed loop of corruption. And notice how your white media isn't saying anything about the judges on this one. They haven't been reporting on this at all. Nah, they don't want to give wall-to-wall coverage of this. This is not something that they want to be part of any sort of national discussion. What about these judges? Because they saw what happened when we forced them to have to focus on the police. People were looking and going, whoa, all these cops are just walking. Some of them got to go to prison, don't they? People start looking at the judges. They're going to be saying, whoa, how come these guys aren't getting sentences? Okay, we see the judges are in it with them. This is about preserving the enforcement arm of white supremacy as much as they can. See, this is the corner that we've painted them into. We've backed them into this corner. Up until now, you could have the Jeffrey Jerkum Tubins saying that the problem was the juries. That was their favorite go-to deflection. The white media loved that because they could then blame the public. And to them, that gave the real bad guys cover. They could just say, it's not our fault, it's the juries. That means the public doesn't want to do this, so there's nothing we can do. Cowards love hiding in the crowd, behind a shield of anonymity, but we've ripped the cover off. And we're holding them accountable, so they're forced to retreat from one fallback position to the next. Problem is, we've kept the pressure on. It hasn't let up. Kept people's attention focused on them, and then the convictions began. Consistently. It wasn't a one-off. Something that the white media said would never happen. That was their job. The white media's job was to explain to us why it wasn't going to happen, and we just need to accept it. But we didn't accept it. And as the convictions began to steadily roll in, you didn't see the white media looking going, how very strange. I mean, we've been spending decades saying this BS line that nobody was going to get convicted. Now they're consistently being convicted. Gee, I wonder what's changed. Nah, they don't want to have to look into this one. There's not going to be any deep dive on this one. No reflecting on this one. Not going to have piece after piece examining this one and asking how the white media get it so wrong. No, instead, as far as they were concerned, let's talk about politics. Let's talk about the next election. Anything but this. We took their favorite lie away from them. Now everyone can see the judges are also part of the problem and that they have been from the beginning. Nobody has the ability to say, well, the reason the cops are getting these lowball sentences is because the jury, you see, the jury. Everyone can look and say, okay, it's these judges. They don't care what the jury says. People are now seeing case after case consistently where these pukes have been convicted and the jury threw the book at them only for the judges to consistently give what amounts to an acquittal from the bench. The white media isn't talking about these judges at all. They can't afford to. Just like they don't talk about how all of a sudden prosecutors have gone from telling everyone it's impossible to indict the police to now having both of the so-called left and both so-called right-wing media whining that all these cops being indicted and convicted will make them afraid to do their job. Yeah, murdering unarmed innocent black people, that's their job. The white media has been part of the propaganda counteroffensive that the enemy's been waging. And that's why the white media's been pushing all this hysteria about crime, crime, crime. I showed you how crime is lower now than it was just a year ago. But the way they're talking about it, you would think it was Mad Max out there. That's the point, though. This is a textbook example of the white media and the thugs in blue coordinating their efforts to manufacture a pretext. The thugs in blue are attempting to regain some of all that ground that we took from them. But as with all aggressive wars, first you have to do some preliminary work. You can't just rush in guns blazing or everyone will recognize what you're trying to do and stop you. Or at the very least, they won't support you. So what they have to do first is they got to lay the groundwork for their racist counteroffensive. And that's where all the propaganda about crime is out of control comes from. Oh, you got to tell people that crime is the worst ever. The election's going to hinge on this. Who cares about the economy? Who cares about Russia? Who cares about COVID? It's all about crime. That means black people, because they're going to make sure that black people's faces and black people's cases are the ones that get focused on. Oh, the police are just innocent victims of a gullible society too weak to realize that black people need to be killed. That's where all this phony baloney puff pieces for the cops are coming from. It couldn't be more clear that the white media and the thugs in blue are working hand in hand. It wouldn't be more clear if Patrick Lynch or some other thug with a badge decided to become an anchor over at MSNBC or CNN. It couldn't possibly be more clear that the police and the white media are working hand in hand. The white media is scared. They know that people are focusing on this. We're not letting it go. Just because the white media is not talking about it doesn't mean that we won't. Oh no, they're terrified to call this what it is, a clear case of judicial bias. They won't be curious how the judge came to such a blatantly insufficient sentence. No examination of it, no questions. Your Honor, we'd like to talk to you just to ask how the hell you come to this. And they certainly won't be asking if there's any sort of pattern at work here. No, they're not going to be doing that. They're not going to be calling the public's attention to the fact that, gee, you have all these juries who are convicting these police and you have the judges who are deciding to give slaps on the wrist. Talk about soft on crime. Nobody's going to be saying that. Instead, what we'll see is the white media dusting off the same old lies that they told about the juries. And instead, they'll be applying these lies to the judges. Judges do have discretion, you know. The law is not perfect. There are just some of these things, you know. People aren't happy with the sentence, but you know, you can't question their experience or judgment. That's their call to make. What can you do? But they won't investigate it. They won't question it because their mission is to force people to accept this. They hope that people will become demoralized. But instead, what's going to happen is people will come to the determination that we need to start focusing on punishing these judges. And I told you that we had to put these judges on the to-do list. The same way that people know the names of police who murder black people, we're going to start making sure that people understand the names of these judges who keep acting as accomplices after the fact. Because that's what they are. You cannot reform these racist judges any more than you can reform the racist cops. And don't go kidding yourself that the state bar or some other legal so-called disciplinary committee is going to punish them. If you've ever seen what happens when a judge does happen to get themselves in a bit of trouble, then you know that these disciplinary committees almost never do anything. No, the judges have to be prosecuted, but the question is, who does the prosecuting? Their old buddies from the DA's office, or the state's attorney's office, like Keith Ellison, who will be asking, no doubt, for whatever sentence that comes down the pike to be reduced. And who's going to hear the case? Anti-black bigots like racist Regina Chu. As the enemy sees it, they've gotten enough race soldier operatives on the bench that they think they have some insulation against punishment. That's how they see it. Okay, we've got a certain number of positions covered. We got our bases covered on this one. When the reality is that just like with the racist Regina Chu, they've been lucky that the people haven't focused on getting them out of office. Racist Chu ran unopposed in her last election in 2016. Will she go unopposed next year? But regardless of what happens with that case, we have to go way beyond that. The judges have been on the to-do list for a long while now. To make it very clear, we see what they've been up to and it won't be tolerated. This is about putting the enemy on notice that they will be punished. And it won't be some Weasley DA or some do-nothing state bar disciplinary committee. The people have the power to make sure they answer to us. These scum are at war with justice itself. These racist scumbags are every bit as bigoted as the police that they act as accomplices for. In many cases, a lot of them were in the local thug patrol or married to one, related to one, etc. These racist judges are promoting a race war against black people, and they act as support staff for the race soldiers who commit these murders. Part of breaking the back of white supremacy means to make sure these racists on the bench cannot operate. So we got to make sure we keep calling this out, reminding people we cannot let people forget. We've managed to condition people to watch to see what happens after one of these murders is committed. Does anyone get arrested, and how long does it take? We've conditioned people to observe and see if these criminals get convicted, or if the DA tries to bury the case in the grand jury, or if they don't give it the old college try during the trial, or if the judge starts pulling some shenanigans. And people are paying attention after the trial now. We've conditioned them to pay attention to see what happens when it's time for the sentence to be handed down. They're watching every aspect of the trial. They're watching it now. And it's not just for morbid curiosity. 2020 showed that people want these cops to go to prison, and they want them to do the hardest time there is. And if they don't, then all hell's going to break loose. So the first order of business was to make sure that the thug patrol and these Weasley DAs weren't going to be able to use the anonymity of a jury to hide behind. They weren't going to be able to hide behind a grand jury coming back with a no bill. Or they weren't going to be trying to choose a jury that would be predisposed to let some thug murderer with a badge go. We took that away from them. And when they lose jury support, that means they've lost public support. Now the only way that you can get away with trying to get one of these guys off the hook is you got to come out and do it openly yourself, because the jury won't help you. It's like a stool with 3 legs. We took one of those legs away. So the juries got put under the spotlight. We exposed the illegal tricks and maneuvers the DAs used to avoid bringing indictments, how they rigged and lied to the grand juries. Then we focused on trial juries, and they realized that they wouldn't be anonymous if they tried to subvert the course of justice there either. In the case of the murderers of Breonna Taylor, the grand jury broke all the way bad, and they went to the court to get permission to tell what happened behind the scenes. It's an all-out revolt in the jury room. These white supremacists finally realized they were in a race war where the good guys were firing back, putting these animals on the defensive, taking ground. So while what we're seeing is disgusting, it should not be surprising. I warned you that the judges would be the white supremacists' last ditch in the courtroom. That once the juries began regularly convicting them, they would be forced to depend on the judges to throw out the verdicts. And that the judges would also understand the more that happens, the more the public is going to be looking at the judges and going, okay, you're part of the problem too. We made it where there's no good options for them here. If they give these thugs with badges the proper sentence, that means they go away for a long time, in which case the enforcement arm of white supremacy is broken. On the other hand, if they refuse to give these guys the sentences they deserve and give them a slap on the wrist, the public becomes enraged and goes, well, all of you bastards, the DAs, the judges, the cops, all of you got to go. And that includes Keith Ellison, by the way. Why do you think that scumbag's been so quiet since this illegal and unjust sentence was handed down? He hasn't been looking and going, we need an investigation of this. Man, this sure does seem to be happening a lot. We should look into this. This is very strange. Oh, he's completely disinterested, don't you know? So the enemy is very much worried. What they're doing now, they know that they're exposing themselves completely. They also understand exactly what the implications of this are. The public's going to be looking at them and going, okay, so you're in it with the cops. Everyone's going to be seeing it because when it's this egregious, when it's this blatant, you can't deny it. That's why the white media doesn't want to talk about it. Let's focus on something else, anything else other than this. As the enemy has taken L after L, they've gotten desperate, and now they're just saying, screw it. Ignore the law, say that no white person goes to prison for killing a black person. I mean, what do we got to lose? As it turns out, a lot. A whole lot. Racist Chu is up for re-election next year. What's called for is the same determination that drove the racist Anita Alvarez from office in Chicago, and Angela Corey from office in Florida, and Tim McGinty in Ohio. People need to remember this piece of trash, and when they toss her out on her ear, make sure everyone knows why this happened, and that the public is gunning for crooked judges to make examples out of them. There have already been people by the hundreds literally demonstrating right in front of Racist Chu's front door. But they have to go beyond mere marching and chanting. Action is what's called for here. Judges who act as accomplices after the fact in the murder of black people, the public has to speak loudly and clearly that there's already been a verdict reached in the court of public opinion, and that verdict is guilty. Good evening, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Chaz, Keitha Dixon, Wesley Monroe, Quee, and Atu Hammond. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.